Hello, family, friends, and fans. I'm Fletch Roden, and this is Fletch Me Anything. Today on Fletch Me Anything, Steely Dan's The Second Arrangement resurfaces. Well, you may not know what that is. You may know who they are. You may not know who I am or what this is. Well, it's Fletch Me Anything. It's a question and answer type show where you can pop in your questions and comments in the comment section of my YouTube channel or Facebook page, and I'll get right back to you. And then I'll talk about anything I want to talk about. One of the reasons I call it Fletch Me Anything. Another is that I'm Fletch, Fletcher Roden. If you don't know me, I'm a writer. Mostly, I got a lot of books available under my own name and others. They are fiction and nonfiction, available in paperback and for Kindle and in audiobook format. If you've got Audible, check me out there. I'm also a recording artist with a new pop album called The Wendy Theory that's available to download from any of your favorite download sites, or you can get it on CD from my website. There's a link below. All right, well, let's see. I suggest you subscribe to this uh, YouTube channel. That'll make finding videos for that cool pop record easier to find. And it'll also make finding Fletch Me Anything easier to find. And this is where I give away a free book at the end of every month. I just did that last week for last month, and now it's a new month. So at the end of this month, for the whole week of the last week of every month, I give away unlimited copies of a Kindle edition of one of my books. You don't even need a Kindle tablet to read it. You can just download the Kindle app, the Kindle Reader app from Amazon. That's free, and you can read it anywhere. Okay, so Steely Dan. Well, this is not really a review and not really looking back. It's sort of news. This song. Okay, so Steely Dan. They recorded an album, their last album together, before they broke up and then reunited later on. There's It was called Gaucho, and it's a famously troubled production. There is disease involved in it, injury, uh, complex technologies. They designed a whole computer just to record the drum tracks, and they had a whole room, as I understand it, dedicated to this multi machinery apparatus that was designed to somehow record the drums. I've heard this album many times, and they just sound like drums to me. But they do sound very, very good. Gaucho is a strong album, but it's well known to be only half of what it is. It should have been twice as long, you know, or it should have been different. A lot of Gaucho is rewritten from other albums, like the song "Third World Man" is a rewrite of a song from Royal Scam called Were You Blind That Day? And frankly, it's better as Were You Blind That Day? They're both good. Third World Man, they're both very relevant to today's socio-political climate in the United States. But I prefer the Royal Scam version. Let's quickly run through Steely Dan. Just really quickly, if you don't know Steely Dan, they started off as an early 70s um, sort of a, AM radio and then an FM radio hippie band, basically. I mean, if you look at something like Do It Again, a lot of the stuff off their first album, it's it only hints at it's more of a rock band. It's a hippie, it's a progressive type of a band, and it's got jazz leanings, but it's not the jazz disco you think of when you think of Steely Dan. It's not yacht rock. It's more along the lines of the Doobie Brothers, or I want to say Wings for its during its inception because of that time, or early Fleetwood Mac. I would say compares to the early Steely Dan. And then they refined their sound, but they only, they were a rock band for a long time. They played in they recorded in LA for their first couple albums. And then they said, these LA musicians are making us sound like boop boop. So they moved to New York. I think they were in LA for Katie Lied and Can't Buy a Thrill, which they have a lot of good songs on those albums. Uh, Particularly, Can't Buy a Thrill's got Midnight Cruiser, great song. Dirty Work, great song. A lot of good songs, and the hits, of Do It Again, and there's like pretty early songs. But then they took it back to New York for things like Pretzel Logic and Royal Scam, and that's where the album, the Steely Dan really hit up their peak as a rock band was Royal Scam. That's the perfect mix of rock and jazz. They had other ones along the way. Countdown to Ecstasy is sort of my least favorite of their records. Um, they did a lot of percussive things early on with like maracas and lots of congas and things like that they wound up getting away from, which was wise. They went more toward the guitar and things like Royal Scam. That record is great. There's not a clunker on that record. Um, Countdown to Ecstasy, I have to say, hit and miss. Some great stuff. Pearl of the Quarter is on that record. Can't listen to it without crying. But so anyway, they went from this hippie rock band to sort of a really sharp progressive rock band up until Royal Scam, and then after that they did Asia, which is a drastic move from Royal Scam, which is their rockiest rock album, and it's one of the best rock albums, to then Asia, which is a disco jazz album. It's just not the same kind of. It's almost a different band. It's like it's almost a different band. Of course, they have the hallmarks. The guy, Donald Fagen's vocals, and Becker does a lot of work, especially on the guitar, and he's very good. Not as visible as Fagen, but still in there. But it's just a radically different record. It's a huge leap. It's like Steely Dan's first phase goes all the way to Royal Scam, and then it ends there. And then they do Asia, great record too, by the way. And then they did Gaucho, and then they stopped. And then whether or not you include the Nightfly in with this area or FM is definitely late era Steely Dan, no doubt about it. But then then there are the solo records for a lot of years, and then they came back and did 2 records and toured a bunch of times, and then and now Donald Fagen's making a new solo album. He's a solo album guy now. Has to be. The other guy died. So there you have the three epochs really of Steely Dan are Can't Buy a Thrill to Royal Scam, then Asia and Gaucho, and then the solo albums and the reunion tours and the reunion albums. Those are kind of all the same kind of ish. They're all good though. And I guess they're going to continue on, and that's great. But this 2 album period of Asia and Gaucho were really tumultuous for these 2 guys, and Asia took a lot out of them apparently to make. And apparently after Nightfly, Donald Fagen just couldn't make a record for 20 years. He was so depressed by having made the Nightfly. I don't really get that. I've looked into my past and drudged it up and poured it all out for everyone to see, and I'm fine. But whatever. So Gaucho, it was twice as long, and a lot of it is just in demo form, or it was recorded and never released. You can find it on YouTube. The other Gaucho, or like the Gaucho second album or something like that. It's got hits on it. Hey 19, big hit. Babylon Sisters, big hit, great song. Some things I don't really like. The fashion profession. Throw that one out. What should have been on that album is FM, and then this song, the second arrangement. Okay, so now we come to the second arrangement. The legendary story of this song is, and this song is so legendary that it's been goofed on by other people. Eric Bogosian did a bit on one of his solo shows, his one man shows, about a rocker, and they'd played the greatest tape of all time, and their engineer, who they called Hoover, had forgotten to put the tape in to the machine. But it had been the greatest jam of all time, and didn't get recorded. So what happened here is Steely Dan recorded this song, this second arrangement, for Gaucho, and it's an ode to, it's one of their snarky reptilian guy who walks the streets, who goes from woman to woman, sort of. It's there's a lot of that in Asia and in Gaucho. Gaucho's filled with that infidelity and let's just say multiplicity of romance. So here's a song. They recorded it. Everybody loved it. They said, "Oh, this is the greatest Steely Dan song we're ever going to do. We love it. It's great." Somebody made a cassette tape of it and lost the tape. And then apparently what happened is the master got ruined. It got blown. It got erased or something, And they all came into the studio, and the engineer's like, "Well, I've got the last 15 seconds of it." So I can't imagine what happened to that guy that day. But it was lost. So they tried re-recording it, and they weren't happy with it. And then they struggled to re-record it and get as good a recording as they had the first time, maybe better. And they didn't. They failed. Tried, you failed. But, so they just let it go. And they've done it on tour. I've heard it live. Not personally, but, they would do a show. They would do like 5 shows, and one show would be a deep cuts or rarities show. And they would do it during one of those. So I've heard it live, and it's okay. I know the song because of the demo. The demo exists. It's piano and bass. He's on piano. I think Becker's on the bass, and he's just singing through this song, and it's so good. I thought that would be the best thing I'd ever hear of it. I believe I've heard other people do take that demo and add tracks and try to recreate it and stuff. Never worked. It's just one of those things, Except the cassette tape that everyone thought was lost, it was found. It says second arrangement, 2 NDRR on it. So apparently the people who found it are like, and they brought it to an engineer, and he put it into a computer and did a little bit of computer magic on it. And it's the second arrangement by Steely Dan. The lost Holy Grail relic, the thought lost thing that was so great that everybody was bemoaning that it had been lost is found, right? This is better than the Beatles Now and Then. Screw that. That's been found a million times. It's like Batman Begins Forever, we know. But this is new. It's not brand new, obviously, but it's new to us. And it is very, very good. Excellent. Classic Steely Dan. Classic, great in every way. Terrific performances, great lead vocal, great girls, singers. The chords are just right. The groove is just right. There's a great play out at the end. How they wrote a chord progression like this, beyond me. I always have been a Steely Dan fan. Caveat on that, I'm a fan of these guys. I love the way they write these songs. I have tried to approach it, but I don't claim to have succeeded. There's a song on the Wendy Theory called "With a Girl Like You" that's very much a Steely Dan knockoff. It is. It is. And I don't claim it to be anything else. That's what it is. I did a song called Mustang Cool on an album called Night Season. That's almost the same song, but it's also very much a Steely Dan-ish kind of thing. But I can't approach it. How they put this riff. If you listen to just the play out at the end of it, the vamp at the end of it, it boggles the mind as a songwriter to listen to it. How how do they how do they ever come up with that? Whoever heard that in their head the first time, and then they play it in such a way that makes it feel so easy and breezy, like it's just the most natural thing to do. But it's a complex figure, but it just flows like milk and honey, which is what they did. That was their stock and trade. But Hey 19 is a good song, but it's not that complicated. It is kind of when you slide on down, Josie. Asia is filled with complexity. The wild polychords in it are just, it boggles the mind how these guys write. But it is so well encapsulated in this song, the second arrangement. Also the lyrics. Pour out the wine, little girl. I've got just two friends in this whole wide world. And then it just goes on from there. And remember the dying rose, the one dying rose, and the one last goodbye. Then I run to the second arrangement because this guy it's the king snake crawls again. It's this character that Donald Fagen plays in a lot of these songs. Where he's all these hungry, all these lonely women. And he does it on his solo albums too, where he's picking up women in parks and in zoos and in bars, and they're either too old for him or too young for him, or they're just right for him, or he's not right for them. And his is not a theme of monogamy. He and Paul McCartney would have not written the same type of lyric because they just the one Fagen is a narrative guy. So he's not really writing songs about his own life a lot of the time. I think he's just writing little novellas about these characters that he likes, these Raymond Chandler-esque characters. Sometimes he's very autobiographical. I'm not saying he's not. The Nightfly is all about his childhood. The whole Nightfly trilogy, which I'll go over probably, is all about his childhood. So it is, and the trilogy is about his life, his childhood, his middle age, and his late life experiences. So it's not that he doesn't draw from his own experiences. It isn't. But he is a very narrative writer. So things like Don't Take Me Alive, he was never a sniper locked in a tower. It's a narrative. He's a storyteller. Cousin Dupree, he's a storyteller. So this song, the second arrangement, is a very interesting story about a Lothario type of a character, and it's just perfectly presented. To me, it's the rhythm and the chord progression, the licks. These things work together so well. It's songwriting par excellence, par excellence. Now this album was a hit. Gaucho was a hit, but it had come just after Asia, and Asia was a monster, and they were never going to beat Asia. Asia redefined music of the era in a lot of ways. It helped create disco. God help it. But it does transcend disco too. It's not like, no, it's a disco thing like, Donna Summer. I mean, Asia is still as brilliant today as it was then. But it was very popular. Peg was very popular in the dance clubs. And it was just a huge, huge hit. And Gaucho was not going to touch that, but it could have, if they had second arrangement on it instead of Fashion Profession. It would have done a lot better. It would have had 3 huge hits, and there are other things too. There are other lost songs from that album. I encourage you to go look for the Lost Asia or the Lost Gaucho or Gaucho Volume 2 or Gaucho the Other album or something like that. There are several releases of it in bootleg form on YouTube, so check it out. But none of them have the actual second arrangement. I've put a link below so you can check it out for yourself. By all means do. It's great. Steely Dan gives us another masterpiece, another treasure. And it's a good time to look back on Steely Dan and all their music as it changed through the years and evolved, which it did, and they had great music all along the way. That first album had Kings too, I believe. Or was that Katie Lied? No, that's Can't Buy a Thrill. Kings, great song, but just a different. It's a different band than Asia. You can just hear where they're looking. They're in different terrain. They're in different territory that they largely created. But even so, also Gaucho. If you've never heard Gaucho, listen to Gaucho. It's good. It's a good record. My favorite album is Royal Scam of Steely Dan. Definitely listen to that if you haven't heard it. I may do a look back on that. That album deserves a look back for sure. Okay, so that's it. The second arrangement by Steely Dan, a Holy Grail uncovered for us. That's the subject of today's Fletch Me Anything. I'm here Monday through Friday. I post around noonish, sometimes around midnightish. I leave them up for about 2 weeks or so, depending on the timeliness of the subject matter. And it could be just about anything. Sometimes music, sometimes looking back, sometimes reviews from the current, sometimes politics, sometimes, a joke or writing tips or who knows what I'm going to talk about. It could be anything. That's one of the reasons I call it Fletch Me Anything. Thanks for staying to the end. I hope you enjoyed and get some value out of it. And I'm going to be back with a lot of fun stuff this week. So tune in again and subscribe if you will. I hope you get some value out of this. I will talk to you again. And until then, this is Fletcher Roden signing off for Fletch Me Anything, hoping that you are happy and stay healthy. Bye, Mary.